Yesterday we saw how important, essential it is for us to have humility. And some people were reflecting about this, and they are asking for us to give a key so that they can work more quickly on humility and efficiently. One way for us to work on humility is that we may observe the firmament at night, for example, when the sky is all starry, when everything is so clear. So we look at that and we observe until we manage to feel the infinite in that. And as we observe the firmament, as we gradually make that contact with this immensity, a gradual change happens in us, because all of that reflects on our being. All of that is helping us. All of that is influencing the earth. And as you have this group vision, seeing the firmament as a whole, this carry out a subjective work. It redimensions the personality very much. It redimensions the ego very much. Even while you see that infinity and you don't really know what this is. You don't know how this began. You don't know where it's going to. You don't really know the value of all of that. There are millions and millions of dots, luminous dots, and we don't know what they are. Some move a little bit, and then suddenly we don't even know if they are stars or vessels or other presences. We don't know if those stars still exist, because the distances are so great that when they stop existing, we take millions of years to come to know, because they stopped existing, but the light is still coming on the way. So this is something so great, so out of our reach, that then humility begins to emerge within us. We unconsciously begin to work on this humility. And regarding humility yet, someone read in the esoteric glossary that humility is a fundament for all evolutionary works, and that humility protects us against the attacks of contrary forces. Yes, because if we are humble, this is the same of opening space for higher forces to descend and unite with us. Higher forces can descend and unite with us and help us and collaborate more with us when they find this space. And this space is humility. If we don't have humility, the higher forces are waiting for space to be able to enter, to come. And this is why they say there that humility defends us against certain attacks. Because with humility, we have inner strength, in higher strength closer to us. Then these attacks cannot happen. Or if they happen, they become neutralized. Yesterday, we were even observing that if we have this attitude, if we are in this situation, we don't need to pray. We don't need to pray. Really, we don't need to pray, because humility eliminates all the possibilities for us to need protection. Humility in itself is a protection. So here you can see someone observed that some people try to avoid certain tasks, such as, for example, cleaning the bathrooms. So they always try to avoid these tasks and do others. The material aspects of work and service are very basic, so that we may then right away or consequently enter more subtle, more internal aspects. When we are taking care of material aspects, there is an order also. When it is about the material aspects, the first steps are eliminations. So before we carry out more subtle purifications, we need to eliminate things, because there are certain things in the being that have no way to be purified. They have to be eliminated. So this is the symbol of the bathrooms. The bathrooms represent the first stage of the work of purification, which is the work of elimination. So it is as if first we had to eliminate certain things, and after certain things that cannot be recovered being eliminated, then a process of purification begins. So the cleaning of bathrooms is related to this stage, the stage in which we need to eliminate things. So bathrooms are a very important symbol, not only on the physical plane, as it is obvious, but also in this symbolic interpretation of life. So when we are going to clean a bathroom, we are taking care of this part of elimination. We are collaborating so that elimination may take place in the best way possible. Without this taking place, it's not possible for us to go through the process of purification. So those who refuse to clean bathrooms still have many things in themselves to be eliminated to be able to enter a more dedicated process of purification, a more efficient process of purification, and maybe more quickly. Because this goes through stages. First of all, we need to eliminate things, and we have to ask for inner light to see what to eliminate, what is the priority, what has to come out first, so that we may begin a more conscious process of purification. And after this elimination in the beginning, then purification begins. There is a part that is purified, and another part that will need to be transmuted. And this is another process. Then we enter a process of transformation of the foundations of our matter. And we enter a different stage in this transmutation, which is eventually replacing that which cannot be transformed. So if something is very rooted within this process of transmutation, we can have areas of our material that are replaced with other areas. So transmutation not only transforms, modifies basically our matter, but it also replaces certain parts that are not very docile, meek, with other parts that are placed there. But this begins with elimination. Without the elimination at the beginning, this process cannot take place. So there is the elimination of this that at first is there, that cannot be recovered. Then there is purification, then transmutation, and finally sublimation. Finally, the change of plane, the change of level of everything that was purified, of everything that was transmuted. So these are stages of the process of elevation of the being. And on the physical plane, they are represented by places, tasks, situations that we should equally respect, because all of this forms a current, a chain. So without cleaning bathrooms, it's very difficult for us to clean the mind right away. First of all, we need to clean the bathrooms, then we can clean the emotional plane, clean the mind, thoughts. There's an order in this. We cannot skip stages. And someone was going through the brief path, or the short path. She was going through the short path, and she had a dream that in the palm of her left hand there was a small animal. And when she observed the palm of the hand with this animal, she saw that two of her fingers had been cut. Then these fingers grew, but they were longer than the normal fingers. Although her mind could not understand, she internally knew what this was, because our mind understands until a certain point. After a certain point, the mind doesn't understand anything. The mind can only understand that which it has experienced. Everything the mind has not yet experienced as mind, it has no way to understand. So if you have had many incarnations, today you can have an experienced analytical mind, because you have gone through so many things. So in this lifetime, this mind could bring to you its experience from previous lifetimes. But the mind cannot bring anything new to you. The mind can only keep things it has experienced. So these very acute, experienced minds are minds that have lived a lot, that have a lot of experience. But everything the mind says is old. Everything the mind says has already been experienced. It seemed like it's new because it was lived in previous lifetimes, but it's old. Otherwise, the mind would not be able to bring. So the mind is limited to that which is the past and the record of the present. And for us to have a different understanding, we have to really go beyond the mind. So in this person's mind, this person could not interpret this because she had never gone through such an experience to have such a vision. But internally, she had this understanding. So the palm of the hand is the symbol of our being able to radiate energy, to be able to bless others and things. The palm of the hand represents our point from which certain energies come out to external life. This is the symbol of this radiation. And the left hand is the capacity of the personality to radiate good energy, serve and radiate. Serve radiating. And this person saw in the dream a small animal tied to the palm of her left hand. So there is in her leftovers of animal instinct that impede her to radiate beneficial energy, that impede her to give of herself. There is an instinctive animal part that is obstructing the palm of this left hand. Now she also saw that two fingers had been cut, and then these fingers appeared a little longer. That is, because of this instinct leftover being obstructing the palm of the hand, the resources that the hand has to serve and work, the fingers are part of this hand. So with this possibility is limited. There were two fingers lacking, but then there was an understanding, an inner contact, and these fingers appear again. That is, there is a progress, and the fingers reappeared. The fingers appeared longer because she was uselessly worried. She didn't have to worry about this. She had to allow the process, she was supposed to allow the process to happen. And in her worry, there was an excess of care, and her fingers were uselessly longer. That is, we have to have an inner light, not to have excess of care. The longer finger means excessive care. There was energy being wasted when the understanding was enough, the clearness was enough, and everything was going to take place. There was no need for more energy to be placed there. This is a person who has a very intense inner life, and she should dedicate herself more to these symbols, because there are many things within her, to be externalized, to be shown to herself for her to understand. Here we can see that it is a symbol that was not totally expressed. There could be many more things to be said there. Well, we were seeing yesterday, right, that the polishing of the personality, the work that is carried out upon our ego, our being, this work has as basis, as a foundation, friction, suffering. But today, this polishing of our beings can take place more quickly with the help of the hierarchy. We saw that more powerful energies are present today in our process, something that they were not in the past. For example, the energy of our soul is much more present today on our path, and the energy of our monad, our spirit, also begins to make itself present. This makes a huge difference. Something else that is taking place today, as we have seen, is that beings, very advanced beings of planetary consciousness and solar consciousness are going through an expansion of consciousness that is very strong. And this is reflecting in humanity, this is reflecting in humankind, in the rhythm that the development of humanity takes place. So it is as if today we had much less work to dominate our matter. The dominion of matter in the past was a much harder work, arduous work. Today it is less hard, less arduous, even because beings who are in contact with the earth are carrying out this work, and this influences the rhythm of our work. This is why many of us feel a progress that is not proportional to the effort we have done. That is, they didn't do almost any effort and they feel they are walking, evolving. This is due to the effort of the process of very advanced beings who are in contact with the earth, and their growth, their evolution is reflecting here. So it is as if they were, in a certain point, working for the earth, supplying needs of the earth and the earthly humanity. And we have seen that this reality is so different from the past, when people needed to suffer very much to evolve on the spiritual path. Today there is almost no suffering. Today we think we evolve more than we deserved. So we need to see where this comes from, because if we see what this comes from, our gratitude, our humility increase, and our attitude before these facts change. And yesterday we also saw that the key for everything today is not our suffering on the path, is not our going through great sufferings, great afflictions. The key is that we should not be undefined regarding the higher goal. Is for us to define ourselves regarding that which we want. This is the key for today. When you define yourself, when you have no longer doubts, when you are not divided regarding your inner goal, from there on, things gradually flow, things take place. And this is also due to the presence of the energy of the seventh ray that is very present today on the earth and in humanity. This energy of order and ceremonial that manages to connect, to reflect, to make reflect here this reality of this hierarchy that is evolving, that is infinitely growing. This seventh ray reflects, connects, organizes, so that this influence, this emanation, may descend down here. And in this process then, this current process, we were seeing that we no longer need to be taken to the darkness of the pyramids, that we no longer need to have great ceremonies to evolve. What we need is silence and faith. That is, we need to be before this peacefully, without doubting. This is an indispensable condition for all of this to take place. And we saw that before we had to have reclusion, we had to have fasting, we had to have need. You know stories of so many saints who slept on the ground, who didn't cover themselves in the cold. So this was necessary in other times. It's no longer necessary. All of this was replaced with this great grace that the process of higher beings is reflecting upon the earth, upon ourselves. And nowadays, we also no longer have need to be tempted, to be tested. And we have seen that temptations today are much simpler than those sorts of temptations that the beings in the past had when they entered the path. However, this intermediation of the hierarchy continues to be necessary, this intermediation of higher beings. This is why when we go through the spiritual path, it is revealed to us internally the presence of some hierarchy or one hierarchy or a few hierarchies. So if we have this lack of faith in the hierarchy, this point that is still not very clear in us, it is as if we were there putting an impediment, a barrier for us to have this help. It's very important for us to come to know this process, and it's very important for us to be aware about the help you can have or the hierarchies that work with us. This is very important due to the moments of trial. In the moments of trial, when we remember these things, we go through trials, through tests more easily. But if we don't have this knowledge, if we don't have this information, during the test, we are before the test without a certain understanding, and without a certain understanding on how to seek help. Through tests, we change the point we are, doubtlessly, but there is a way to go through tests, which is to know all these facts, which facilitate very much to us. And we have seen that in the past, these stages were slower. These stages happened in a greater number. And those who were very firm on the path were even considered to be that they needed asceticism. Today we have a moderate asceticism. Today we have a very moderate process. We have also seen that stages are quicker in a smaller number, and we merge certain stages together. We have not even finished a stage and we can feel the other coming. These stages are merging together. And today we can also perceive the inner groups, and this makes a great difference. These perceptions may not be conscious, but these perceptions internally, we have them. We have them internally. So when we begin to perceive internally the inner groups, and when we internally begin to locate ourselves, find ourselves in these inner groups of souls, external life really becomes much simpler when our soul internally begins to recognize its group, when the soul begins to consciously work with other souls, kindred souls that have a task together. You can imagine how easy relationships side become? Because then we make a transference of the external relationships to this inner relationship, to this consciousness of our soul in an inner group. And when we are beginning to have this awareness, it is as if the relationship that we are looking for and the relationship that we take care of is this, the inner relationship, our life in the group of souls. So we see this life here, we see these groups here, we see this relationship here as a sort of a reflection. And what happens here gradually, that has sides that we cannot control, because on the level of the personality there is free will, there are reactions, heterogeneity of race, of evolutionary points, and this complicates the external relationship very much. And there is no way to resolve this externally, because just by thinking that you have a group of race and the other one you have to relate has the opposite race to your being, this brings an external relationship that sometimes discourages for you to have this in harmony. And there is no true solution out here. There is no true solution in the external part. You cannot change anyone's way. You cannot make the individual evolve more quickly. If they had 40 incarnations and you had 80, they cannot have 40 to be equal to you. This is impossible. So the relationship out here becomes really very tiring, as you know, due to the experience you have. So while this inner relationship does not begin, while the soul cannot see itself within its group, while the soul cannot relate with other souls in the inner groups, this relationship, this external relationship is impossible to happen. But as the relationship of the soul in the inner groups, with this realization of the soul in the field of relationship of the inner group, with this radiates and flows for the external relationship. And what is going to happen in the external relationship is not equality of quality, because this can never happen. Someone cannot understand something in the same way you understand, because then there is a difference between the evolutionary levels. There is a difference of experiences. So two people cannot understand one thing in the same way. And if we are on this plane of this relationship only, life really becomes very complicated. And it is when the soul begins to recognize the inner group of souls that is a group of the same ray, which is a group of this that has the same task. It is when this inner relationship begins to happen that the soul begins to transmit to the personality, to the mind, this peace, this calmness, this security, this impression of being in the correct relationship and developing this relationship, this internal relationship in the group of souls. Then this begins to flow to the external relationship, and we are capable of having a harmonious relationship, of having a relationship that is balanced, however different humanity, diverse humanity may be, however different beings may be among themselves. So this peace we seek out here, and this relationship, this correct relationship we look for out here, we cannot get it. It's useless to look for it while the soul in its level does not begin to participate in these groups. So the inner groups of souls begin to take place currently. Currently, souls begin to realize that they are a group. Souls begin to realize about this, and souls begin to live in group. And as this happens, our external relationship changes. Our relationship here in the world, in external life, changes. Nothing will change in the sense of people becoming equal, of people level up. This is not going to happen. You're going to relate with people. It's not that you are finally equal. You're going to relate well with anyone in any circumstance. It is when your soul is in the inner group, when your soul is well in the inner group, when your soul is conscious of this relationship of yours with other souls. This is taking place today. So this changes the path out here completely. This changes the way for us to walk outside here completely. And as the soul is secure, is experienced in its inner group, and as this inner group of souls is established and works together, the path out here becomes very simple, and you can even forget this path, because things go surrendered to a certain order, a certain harmony that the seventh ray, which is leading many sectors of life on earth, promotes and leads. In the inner group, in the group of souls there internally, souls are gradually going to understand the direction that the evolution of human kingdom must take. So in the inner group, it is studied among souls which is the direction of the human kingdom, how this evolution is traced, and how each soul is going to place itself within this evolution. And also, it comes very clear in the inner group of souls, the perception of the spirit, the perception of the monad. And among the souls in the inner group, they begin to receive more directly and in greater proportion, the energy of the monad, the energy of the spirit. So these souls in the inner group, beginning to receive this energy of the spirit in a greater proportion, with more freedom, these souls working there, they are going to manage to pass to external life, to transfer to external life other energies of healing. They will manage to transfer to energy of outside, an energy of strength, a different energy. Therefore, the human path here on earth changes very much. With all of this, the human path changes, gradually transforms. We gradually transform on the human path. And the more, with less preoccupation we have in this sense, more all of this can happen and flow. Something else that has changed in our process is when we are helped individually, we have to be before a hierarchic energy that is helping us. And in the past, each one of us had to go and be before this hierarchical presence to be directly helped. So each one had to get there. So the process was very slow. Today, each one of us that arrives there, that gets there, takes a little bit all of humanity there. So there are beings that perhaps are before a hierarchic presence and they don't know how they arrived there. It means that the progress of each one, the steps of each one, reflect upon all. So it's as if today everyone walked, but the proportion with which we walk, the speed we walk, does not only depend on us, it depends on how others are walking. If in a group, for example, there is someone who walks very fastly, even the slower ones begin to walk quickly. They walk more quickly than they would walk. This is a great difference because in the inner groups, souls are already uniting in these things, and here things could be much more unified also. So the process continues to be individual, but the individual process reflects upon other individuals in a much stronger way, in a much freer way than they reflected before. They didn't even reflect before, practically. So today we can have a lot of hope before a group. It's enough that in a group there are some that are walking quickly. So if some are walking quickly, if some are already decided, if some are already in an accelerated pace, this is going to pull everyone. And when they get before a hierarchy, an entity, an energy in which everyone has to arrive before, it is as if they were appearing to all, as if this influence came to all. Well, this is possible not only because of these presences that are much more connected to the earth than they were before, but it is also possible because of the influence and the energy of constellations, of nuclei of the cosmos. They are creating connections with the earth, and before they did not have such a perfect connection with the earth. In the past, the earth received directly much more the energy of certain advanced planets of this system, of closer worlds. But today, in the current time, there are worlds or there are realities such as Sirius, for example, they are making contact with the earth that they didn't do before in the same proportion. So the path here on earth, the earthly path, has changed very much, because in all of these there are stellar energies, energies of worlds that are in direct contact with the earth, and it wasn't like this before. Besides these entities, these hierarchies, this Sirius, this great sun that is the ruler of our sun, is reflecting upon all of us much more. And the inner schools, in the schools where the souls are enrolled, all of this is much more open to the earth. So today, initially, the internal path would be for us to gradually realize about these inner groups and these groups of souls. This causes that on the surface in our external life we may have more contact with immaterial energy and not remain here in our external life, on our path, only in contact with earthly forces, with immaterial forces, but it begins to be inserted in our lives, in our coexistence with matter, many material forces. We also count today that besides the helps from these hierarchies, we begin to have the direct help from our monad. Our monad is already awakening to these things. So our path, the development of our path, our attitude on the path, all of this is already receiving influence from the monad, from a nucleus of ours that is much closer to immaterial life than we are here with our consciousness. And here nowadays we are also very much helped that the expansion, because the expansion of consciousness happen in group. As they happen in group, they are much more possible, because as it is a group that is having an expansion of consciousness, as it is a whole group, all of this has to have much more strength, much more cosmic force to stimulate these expansions. So when our consciousness is expanding we are not only receiving a particular help force. A whole group is receiving this help. So this that is help for us is much greater. It is as if we had things in a greater proportion, because this is expecting an expansion of a whole group. The group is having the expansion, the group is evolving together, but each one of this group is collecting in this gathering, is collecting from this gathering, from these energies, that which they can collect. Although the whole group is being helped, there is no possibility for each individual to be super stimulated. This is perfectly regulated by the seventh ray. So the whole group is very stimulated, but each one receives precisely what they can receive, in the dose they can receive. For example, we are speaking of the same subject to everyone. There is no possibility at this moment that there is imbalance in the distribution of this. The subject is the same, the word is only one, but each one is perfectly regulated to receive, to understand, to develop precisely that which they need, precisely that which they can assimilate and they can develop. So we can speak of the same thing to many, because there is a regulation there in each one, and each one receives that which they can, that which they must, and each one assimilates that which they can assimilate. So things have changed very much here on our path. So before, we would take 2 or 3 to speak about certain things, then after those 3 we would take 1 to speak about others. We wouldn't ever speak in public of certain things. We would never speak to everyone, because really the differences of understanding, the training of assimilation is very different from one to another. But today the seventh ray has organized things in such a way, the seventh ray working in humanity as a whole, on earth as a whole, and within each one, has made in such a way that groups can receive a stimulation that is very great, without anyone being harmed, without anyone being super overstimulated. This is equivalent to a grace in the field of progress, because this causes the earth, the world, humanity to be able to develop much more easily, with much more rhythm. Although we know, each one of us knows in our human understanding, that we don't deserve so much, that we wouldn't deserve so much. But a group is being considered, and this is being regulated individually in the group, and therefore our structure, our relationship with this whole knowledge has changed very much. We have to take into account that in a close future, the earth will be much more purified than it is now, because cosmic evil that has always been installed on earth, this cosmic evil is being gradually removed. It is being gradually transmuted or removed from the earth. A different circumstance which this planet is going through, and therefore us, besides this cosmic evil is being gradually removed, is that the earth as a planet is preparing itself to be part of that which we call intergalactic confederation. That is, the earth being part of an intergalactic consciousness of the worlds that have more awareness about the galaxy. Not a personal awareness of a planet, but the earth beginning to have a consciousness, an awareness beyond its planetary awareness. This is happening with the planet. Every planet has around itself a circle that protects it from certain things, from certain cosmic movements. They are not in the program for it. So each planet has this sort of protection for itself, and this protection has a certain limit, and this limit is expanding on Earth. The limits of the Earth are expanding, so that which could enter the Earth from the cosmos, from the more advanced worlds, is much more than what could enter before. And this is because the limits of understanding of the Earth, the limits, this circle that exists around the Earth for its life to be kept integrated, this circle is expanding. And because of an influence that is much more direct, much stronger, of the star Sirius, we have the planetary centers such as Mistitlan that has a potency and intergalactic potence as no other intergalactic center had before. So today we have a center such as Mistitlan that has much greater intergalactic possibilities than the previous one, that was Shambhala. Well, we are being invited to read again certain books, because a book, for example, such as Mistitlan, we have not seen almost nothing of what is suggested between the lines there. And for us to have the subject of the new earth, of the new humanity and the new influences more clearer for us, reading Mistitlan again would be very much recommended, because there we are going to see more easily today, we are going to see clearer today than years ago what Mistitlan is, what this planetary center is. And then we are going to be able to collaborate in the entrance of all these energies, these forces, here on this new earth. Not only Mistitlan, but Ex Aurora, this trilogy. These are things to be reviewed. These are books to be read again, because there are keys there, there are details there, there are impulses and stimuli there that we could not perceive when we entered in contact with these works for the first time. We had contact with this and we saw the external part of the book. We saw the external part that these centers showed. But each book of these has the key for us to enter in contact with that energy, with that thread, because certain developments of humanity cannot take place without our being connected with these centers, without an energy of these centers flowing upon us, expanding our consciousnesses and our centers. Each planetary center of these corresponds to a center of forces of our body. So these centers were waiting for the development of the right consciousness in humanity, were already liberated, were beginning for us to have a greater contact with these centers. So these centers assist the development of our right consciousness, and our right consciousness helps for us to have contact with these centers. These are the contacts we have to make. This is the relationship we have to have with the universe and with the cosmos through these planetary centers. So reading again Mistitlan X and Aurora mainly would be very interesting. It could help very much in the development of these studies. Mistitlan X and Aurora are books that we would have to contact again, because there are information of the energy, or of the energy of these centers that we could not perceive when we had contact with this information for the first time. Now we have so much energy from cities, from the hierarchy, as we have seen, so much cosmic energy acting, that our consciousness has opened to certain subtleties to understand certain things between the lines.